I was asked today to speak about my life a little bit and just give you a bit of a rundown as to how I got to where I am today. So I'll try in the next few minutes to summarize my 46 years of life, a little bit of the context around those years, and some information about my parents, the country where I was born, and I lived for the first 21 years of my life. And I just think it's important to do that because in what I do today, it's often in the hard times where you have to really go back to what it is that you are doing and why you're doing it, and the things that got you to where you are. I mean, I'm not a career politician, so it's not like I didn't go to a school here somewhere in North Sydney with all the sons and daughters of politicians that now they're going to be politicians, or I didn't start working in a politician's office and then I decided I wanted to run myself. So I'm not a career politician, and I think a lot of people of colour get to be politicians the same way as I did, not through a career in politics, but more of a community career. So I was born in 1976, only a few months before some terrible times in Argentina's history. So from about 1976 to 1982, we had approximately 30,000 people killed or disappeared for political reasons. So I grew up with my kids I went to school with, friends that they didn't know their parents, and some of their grandparents are still looking for their children and grandchildren. So that has impacted hugely in, I guess, in the things that I feel, and so politics, democracy, also justice and truth are very high on my list of values. So in 1983, we finally got the right to vote, and I saw my parents and my country vote for the first time. So I would have been 7 or 8. And then after that year, 1983, every single election was a celebration. So kind of, similar but different to the election sausage, or whatever we call it here. So, so that is, I guess, where my desire of participating and for others to participate come from. And also why I was so eager to get my citizenship. Because obviously I came as a migrant, so it took me a while to get it. So I had two main reasons why I wanted a citizenship. One was to vote, and the other one was because I wanted to get a university loan. So don't know if anyone can relate to that, but so my parents, that's the story of my parents is also another part that is very important in what motivates me and my purpose. So my dad was the son of Jewish migrants. They were poor, illiterate. Actually, my grandmother didn't know how to read or write. And they arrived in Argentina in between the wars around the 1930s. And I'm sure many arrived in these areas as well around the same time. From what now is Poland and Romania. So while they were not actually physically persecuted in Argentina, they did live in fear and very often were discriminated against. So I was going through, actually, I was visiting last year, and I was going through some of my dad's papers. My dad passed away a couple of years ago due to COVID, and I wasn't able to see him, and I felt how much different things would have been if we had more people that lived in that had strong connections with other countries, and how our politicians were acted differently. So I found this letter of rejection that my dad had received when he tried to join his university student body. because he was Jewish. So 50 years later, he still had this level. So it wasn't just that my dad was Jewish, but and everything that, he brought into our upbringing. The other thing was that he also married my mum, which was the daughter of the baker, and my grandmother, my granddad, and my mum and her sister were Catholic. So they were very Catholics, like every Sunday, church Catholics, Virgin Marys, and so all that. So again, so as you can imagine, my upbringing was a very happy upbringing, but it was also surrounded by issues of race, discrimination, religious conflict between, who was accepted, who is, if my mom is able or welcome at some things, or, et cetera, et cetera. So we always felt a bit in the middle and not understood really why things were one way or another. And we had a huge sense of seeing that there was a lot of things that were unfair, and we didn't understand why. So I don't know you, but I do believe in generational trauma. So, and I definitely see that when I find a cause that I feel strongly about, it's not just because of what is happening, but also of what's happened to my family members in the past. So my dad was also the first one to go to university, but from very humble beginnings, my mom and dad built a wealthy and comfortable living, and they built a lot of opportunities for us, to myself and my two brothers. So I really want to acknowledge the privilege that my parents gave me and the opportunities that were afforded to me, which are not always afforded to everybody. So fast forward to 1999, I arrived in Sydney. The reason why I came was because I went traveling for about a year. I went to the USA and Europe. And after a year of traveling, I met my husband, who I lived in Sydney. So that's pretty much what happened. So I was 22. I was experiencing life. So look, my first impressions were, Australia is really big, very different to Argentina. It's very different to the USA as well. Not America, because I'm American, but I'm not from the USA. Maybe one day we start referring to our countries correctly, but it's also very different to Europe. So my first impressions were like, oh, this country is big. It's really spread out. It's kind of modern. They love all things USA, and they're also full of rules and restrictions. Something that I still experience there. And I think, that's got to do with, it's definitely directly related to the success of this country. But I also think that it might be a bit detrimental to some aspects where we don't need to be told what to do all the time. So my first job, Italian restaurant in a place called suburb called Gladstone in Sydney. I worked in a kitchen. I washed dishes, and I peeled a whole lot of prawns for about a year, and I got paid $9 an hour. So I stayed here on a tourist visa for about 6 months, and then I paid for a college course that gave me a student visa, and then we applied for a de facto partnership residency. And my citizenship, finally, I was able to apply for it around 2006. Again, my time in Sydney was good. I was young. It was fun. I learned lots of stuff. I went to lots of pubs and lots of different places. I traveled a little bit around Australia, which was always very nice. I met a lot of people, and I started volunteering in a program done by Mission Australia. I was a home tutor at the time. So we were going to houses of women to help them with their English skills. these women, for whatever reason, couldn't attend the free classes that TAFE will give to people. It would be mostly due to transport, or they were a bit old, or they had babies. So I met lots of beautiful ladies from Sudan, Iran, Afghanistan, people that honestly, I mean, you see people on the street, but you don't actually get a relationship. And they, I was having dinners with them. I was hanging out with their kids. They constantly were trying to feed me and give me presents, and they were so very grateful for my assistance, right? So I also helped a few other South American organizations, women organizations, with things that they didn't know, like websites and emails and things like that. It was frustrating though. Don't know if you at all relate to these, but please let me know, because I want to know if there's anyone else that feels the same way. But I saw countless, I went to countless speeding, typing tests, Microsoft Office tests, in employment agencies that they're women, because they're mostly women. They were speaking really loud at me because they saw that I didn't understand. So it was, when you start speaking loud there, but I'm not really deaf. So it was kind of interesting. Anyway, I got jobs. I went through different things. I kept studying, always sort of learning something new, especially at TAFE. And I went to Mount Druitt TAFE. I don't know if there's anyone from around that area. I used to take the train because I didn't drive. It took me a long time to drive as well. Eventually, when I turned around 30, I was earning a good wage by then, and I was ready to be a mum. So I had my first baby, Lucas, and we came to Queensland. My husband at the time accepted a transfer to Gladstone, central Queensland. If you don't know what that is, we're not that far up north, but yeah, it's very beautiful, and I hope one day you get to visit. Well, he actually grew up here, my husband, ex-husband now, and his father still lives here. So we moved here for a bit of a sea change, and also to be closer to family. So once I was in Gladstone, I never really thought. I always loved politics. I was in the student council or student body in my high school. I went to rallies. I did placards about the student bus tickets, or to keep university free, and I loved all that. But the immigration situation politics wasn't in my radar. So I remember that when the Labor Party announced that they will allow their members to have a conscious vote about marriage equality, I said to myself that if they do that, I would join the party. So that happened, and I did. So again, some of I'm not, by the time I was following a lot of politics, and I was interested, but again, once in Gladstone, I did the thing that all new mothers do, playing with mothers groups, looked for places to volunteer again, following on the things that I was doing in Sydney. And I got to the Multicultural Festival Association, because all of the regional towns have one. And they're normally kind of run by white people with good intentions. I mean, I don't know all of them, of course, but at least the ones around here. And look, I love multicultural festivals, kind of, but I find that you can eat all the Indian and Chinese food you want, but people go back home and they're still racist. So there is a lot of work to do on top of a multicultural festival. So, and those were the things that kind of got me frustrated too. And through that, that was the first time I had contact with the council and my local councillors. Again, being in a small area is, it's got its pros and cons, but you do get to meet your politicians more than if you were in a big city, because they're pretty, they're part of, they're here. The place isn't that big. You run into them at events and different things. So there is a lot more contact. So you get to learn about the things that they are. You get to know them and what their background is and what they think. So I remember there was not long after I moved here in 2007, there was a council election, and I didn't know anybody, but I voted for all the women in the ballot ticket. So I don't know if I don't think I'll do that again. There's a few women that I probably voted for that I won't do that again. But that's I do at the moment in my council. There's 9 of us, and there's only 2 women. So this local government in Queensland really needs more women in it, and it's very noticeable when you move around. So I'm going back to what we were seeing with the Yarra Council, those, especially the 2 young ladies, they're actually also part of the young council or councillors group. And there's not really many of them in the whole of the country. They actually brought the age up because they weren't getting anybody. So I think it's up to 35. So they can actually have young councillors. So anyway, so going back to, sorry, I don't want to get too much away from the story, but getting to know, some of the things that were happening in the multicultural space. I kept complaining constantly about the lack of support that there was in relation to multicultural programs and support to people that came from new migrants. Gladstone is a very transient place. We have a lot of people that come here for work, and there was a lot of different and entitlements for different people coming on different visas. But at the end of the day, we're all in the same community, and there was a lot of women from migrant backgrounds, especially, were not being helped at all, and there was no social inclusion, and that was also affecting the places where the families were working, because the women, they weren't happy. They didn't want to stay. So that also disrupts, I guess, that our desire of building a community. So in all my still complaints, every time I'll see a politician, every time I got to speak to someone, I just wanted them. I talk to them about investment on projects, in ongoing activities, in having more real, meaningful work that will have real impact, not just this. I dress up in costumes and I dance and sing. I cook a little bit and I entertain. The white crowd there. I really didn't like that. So it's so superficial, and even though it might be, nice, it doesn't really have any outcomes or real results in change in behavior. So eventually we had a big argument at the organization, and that, with the festival situation, and we decided with a few other women to create our own organization, start supporting women, migrant women in the area. So fast forward 9 years later, we were operating offices in Gladstone and Rockhampton and had about 9 people employed. And that was a lot of learning. It was a lot of fun, but there was a lot of frustration too, and wins and losses. And anyway, that was great. Everything that you do teaches you something, and I guess that's how I like to see things. So again, during that time, I met even more people, so ministers, MPs, bureaucrats, everywhere. I also joined a lot more local organizations. I graduated university, and I was appearing in the paper a bit more often. So not often in relation to migrant stuff or community things, but when I realized what was happening, it wasn't deliberate at first, but then I started to realize that I had a profile. And I made a bit of a point of, crafting my profile to, do different things and to make sure that, if something's happening around what I'm doing, that, my face is there, that my name is mentioned. And I know it's really difficult to sell oneself, but it is important. So if you wanna be in public life, you have to be public. So it's also important not to do it too like forward as well. But anyway, it's difficult for women. It's more difficult. It's more difficult for women than men because we've always been judged about everything. But that's why it's also easier in some regional areas. So again, I come to 2016 and there was a council election and I was a bit hesitant, but I put all my huge amount of insecurities aside and I nominated for council. And I didn't win. So I didn't do too bad, but I kind of regret leaving my decision to run or make my decision public because it took me, I left it a little too late. And council elections are in March, but I normally, I confirm my candidacy in January, around January. So these days, I will do it too early. There's no such thing as too early anyway. So you need to remember every single vote counts. And sometimes there is that difference between, 10, 3 votes that will make the difference between you getting in on top or someone else. There's 8 positions in council, in an undivided council, like the one I'm in. It might be different for other people. So, and we don't have the luxury of leaving people guessing. I see men sometimes, they think that they're leaving people there we're in mystery, and but we can't do that. And please never ever say that your neighbours or someone or your friend suggested that you run for council or that you casually want to represent or run for council, because if you actually want it, you need to make sure that people feel that you want it. I don't understand. Men get away with it. Just happens. But to me, it's very important that there's a conviction there that you want to do it. So again, I didn't get in, but it was a great experience. I learned a lot of stuff. I met a lot of people. And I committed there and there that I was going to run in 2020. But in 2018, there was a councillor that resigned and there was a by-election. Again, by-elections are really, really fast. Well, 6 weeks in average. So it was really tough. It was really intense, and but it was very exciting too. The other thing was that all eyes were on me and the other main candidate. There was only 6 of us. So in general, in where I am, there's 8 positions. So, and there will be like 20 something candidates. In this case, there was 6. There was only 1 position, and there was the top 2 runners, which was myself and this other guy. That was very intense as well. I guess people were having a lot of expectations on just me. It wasn't 20 something candidates. So he was 70 years old. He was a real estate agent. White guy. He had been previously pre-selected to run for the LNP in a past federal election. He didn't run at the end, but he was pre-selected. And there I was, with my funny accent. I was 41. I was divorced by then. I had 2 kids in primary school, and well, I had a mortgage. And I was a member of the ALP. I ran independently anyway, so at the end of the day, we all run here independently, historically, but plus the ALP really didn't know who I was anyway. Back then, I don't know if there's many that don't know me now. there are, the women do. I don't know about the men, but so yes, that day in March when I was elected was one of the happiest days of my life. It was sort of that, when you feel that achievement going through the whole of your body, and yeah, it was just beautiful. Again, you all feel it on your own, and the only relationship that it's there is just with yourself. That's why it's important to have a good one, even though it's hard, because we are our worst critics too. So in 2020, there was another election, just a general election, and I was re-elected, and I was elected. Obviously, I was re-elected, sorry. And I was really surprised then too, because I did really well, and I wasn't expecting it. So, yeah, at the moment, there is, as I said, there's 9 people in council, and there's only 2 women, and one of them is myself. So I am actually the first migrant woman to ever be elected to council, to the Gladstone Regional Council.
Yeah.
And this isn't rare, really. I mean, there's 77 councils, and at 46, I'm also one of the youngest ones. At the 2020 election, just to add to stats, there was around 16 or 17 women that were mayors out of 77 councils. And I actually think they're even less now, because I know at least 2 or 3 that have resigned since then. So I can, now I can speak a little bit about what politics is like. I will probably let you ask me questions. Every day is different. It's very full on, but there is also flexible. In my role, there's also 9 people. So it's not the same as being in federal or state politics, where you're an MP or a senator. We have some flexibility. You can focus on some of the things that you really want to, or learn more about some of the things that you don't know so much, because there's 9 of us. You're not the only one that people come to. So my council is undivided though too. And I have to cover all the 10,000 kilometers of region. So, and every piece is different. So, the relationships that are formed have been normally honest and genuine. And I think people kind of sense that. And I think we are moving into a place in which we want to do politics differently. I know there's a lot of resistance, but I do see that, especially the rise of the independents, for example. People that are not career politicians are standing up, and people appreciate more than, the odd and things like that. They want to connect with people then on the same level. And I don't know, that's worked really well for me. So I know people might not agree with me on everything, but I think they trust me. So, and that's kind of the important thing. We cannot, it's impossible to have everybody agreeing on every single issue. But it is possible to have people to trust you regardless. So anyway, that's my approach. So I'm going to see, next year we have elections, so I'll let you know how I go.
That's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that, Natalia. Can you let us know a little bit about your experience in council, and what are some of the things that you've managed to win? Like, what kinds of projects or what kinds of changes in your community have you been able to win for for women or for multicultural groups in your area?
Well, I mean, again, council is very slow, so I can't really sit here and say, oh, look, I built that part, or I did this, or I did that, because it doesn't actually work like that. So, but what I definitely do, and not from one day to the next, it takes some time, it's push some of my values in there. Consistency is one of them. There's also they're trying to stick to a process sometimes. Councils can be very emotional. Well, politics is emotional, but um, being all over the place, it doesn't provide, even though, you need to be kind, but you also need to be strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, as other things, for example, I made council be part of the Welcoming Cities initiative, which is a framework to work best with multicultural communities and First Nations people. We also work very closely with the Reconciliation Action Plan committee, which our council has. So I was the first co-chair to exist because but I actually didn't make that happen. So there was, pretty much just being there, just demand respect and changing the conversations that happen there, or stop some of those conversations. So it's just, that's just, I think it's just changed my council.
Yeah. So one of the questions from Solani is, how did you what were the steps you took from the moment you decided you wanted to nominate yourself? I mean, how did you know what steps to take? Did you go on to the Australian Electoral Commission and read all of that, or did you have someone guiding you? Was there a mentor or campaign
Actually,
buddy?
yeah. Once you start looking, I mean, the process is very simple. You go in the Electoral Commission website, and then there is a thing: do you want to nominate? Do you want to run for office? And it's not very difficult, and it's a form, and you pay a fee, and you have to get some signatures. What is difficult, and maybe that you need some people might need some mentoring or guidance, is in how to maybe do your marketing and do your communication. So I can't tell you how many times I read my first intro as to who I am and why I want to run. And I had people read it for me. It was interesting because in my role doing services for multicultural communities, I got to meet the minister, Queensland minister, at one of the events we had. I think we had our cabinet come up once, and I actually met one of their advisors, and this was the LNP, right? The last LNP government in Queensland, and he was very interested in all things multicultural. And he then, when the LNP didn't get back into government, he started on his own business, and we kept in touch. And because he helped us with some sponsorships and stuff in our organization, and he became some sort of a consultant. And then he contacted me at the time, and he helped a lot of people around Queensland and multicultural candidates. And he helped me a huge amount. And also, and funnily enough, because he is from the LNP, so, but he really helped me. And there was also other people that helped me, but here and there, you have to be also. It is difficult. My 2016 election was a huge learning curve. And for example, I spent a lot more money in my 2016 election than what I spent in 2018 and 2020. Right. And not because no one knew me, honestly, because I knew where to target my spending. Yes. So, someone that the other elections, I also got some help from some of my colleagues. It is. I mean, it is very important that it will save you a lot of money if you're a bit tech savvy, and social media allows a lot of agency from you, and you can do a lot of stuff for very little money and reach a lot of people. But again, being there, given the time, being in those places. So I'm done, and I still do. I go and visit people. I tell them I'm going to be here at such a time. And you can do that before you are elected. If you're running a campaign, there's no reason. I'm a candidate. I'm going to come to all these places. Come and talk to me. And it is likely that not many people will come. But what happens is that everyone in that little town knows that you were there. So
Yes, so thank you for sharing that. Look, we are running behind time. Natalia, there's a number of other questions in the chat. As I'm going through the next slide, next session, would you mind just answering some of those questions that have come up in the chat? That would be really helpful for the ladies. Thank you for sharing that. It was really wonderful to hear your story and you know, your personal journey as well, and your parents, and it's incredible strength and resilience in your story.
Actual thing is, at the end of the day, the only reason that I decided to run was because I met these people and I realized that they weren't special, and there was nothing that they could do that I couldn't. And there's nothing that, these people can do that any of us here can't do.